Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum, namaste, sat sri akal. You're watching the Azeeza Show and my name's Farheen Khan. This week we're actually going to talk about conflict, war, genocide, and the impact that that has on people. With us in studio today is Assia Maameri. Welcome, Assia.
Hi.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And joining us in Vancouver is actually Yasmin Ullah. So welcome to Yasmin as well.
Thank you very much, Farheen, for the kind opportunity to actually speak to you today. It means the world to me.
So Assia, we wanted to kind of start with you. So can you tell us, a little bit about yourself, just so we know who you are?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this show. My name is Assia Maameri. I'm originally from North Africa, Algeria. I have been in Canada for 17 years and I'm a teacher. I work most of the time with kids with disability learning.
Okay, great. And you're in the French school board.
I have 2 kids. Yes,
Yes.
I have 2 kids. And I am still going to university. I'm doing a PhD in economics and another bachelor in psychology. I think I need that bachelor. I need to help myself and to help other kids.
Wonderful.
Also.
Welcome. And Yasmin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. My name is Yasmin. I am a Rohingya. I was a refugee to Canada. I'm currently a Canadian now. I serve as the president of the Rohingya Human Rights Network, a group led by Canadian activists to advocate and raise public awareness on the Rohingya issue. I also serve as a research coordinator at the Free Rohingya Coalition. This is more of an international group of activists that are trying to do anything that they can in their power in order to end the genocide and give some sort of reparation to the victims of this genocide as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome both. So let's start with the first, let's start with sort of the basics, right? Can you define for us what is civil war?
Civil war, it's like dying every day. Living a civil war, that's my impression. It's like every day you go to die, but doesn't happen, then you have to go home and maybe it's going to happen the next day. This is the fear that we live with it for 10 years. We had civil war in Algeria from 1988 to 1998. And we don't know how that happened. One day we just went in the street because we didn't want that regime, then we decided to fight for our democracy, but didn't work the way we thought. And that dream became a disaster because 300,000 young people died in less than 10 years. And watching people dying, I think it's the worst thing. Because you will never forget that.
Right.
You just live with it.
I'm so sorry.
That happened.
Wow. Well, we're going to continue that conversation. I just want to ask Yasmin as well. So Yasmin, you are dealing with a different conflict, and in that we often use the word genocide. So maybe you can describe to us what genocide means to you.
Thank you for the question. When we look at the term genocide or trying to define it, I think it's important for us to look back at our Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It clearly states that every human is born free and equal. And so coming back to how we define the term genocide and how, a person would be able to, a person or a group of people would be able to go about destroying lives, and take away the means of production or the means to survival for these people. It is when we dive deeper and look at how the society or one group of people or the powerful, the most, the people who have the most power in the society takes or allocate the value of life differently. And so when we sort of put a number and put sort of an estimate to how one life is maybe more valuable than the other, then that is the opportunity or an open door for us to actually be able to abuse another human being, or be able to not think back into our most basic values of being humans, or losing our humanity in a sense. And so that is the most I think it is the very core of how genocide come about, and how it's committed. It's when we value lives differently, and based on the ethnicity, based on the alienation or marginalization, or colonialism and whatnot.
Really sorry about that. That's really very difficult. So Assia, let's continue the conversation then. So in terms of civil war, we talked about, you've mentioned Algeria, and you've mentioned that there was so many hundreds of thousands of youth that were killed. So what was that experience like for you? And basically, like, how did you manage?
When you are in it, you don't know how to do it. You just follow the flow, like we say. I was in my 20s, and we were so ambitious, and we wanted change, and we did so many things. But when things changed, when we were seeing bodies everywhere, where we were hearing stories like people were slaughtered or were killed, and they put their heads on the stick, or I was a witness about. I saw my neighbor. I saw them killing my neighbor. I couldn't help him. In fact, two neighbors. But that one, I was face to face, and I was asking them to stop, but they didn't stop. I didn't have that fear they could kill me, because that time I wanted to save him. And when you try to save someone and you can't, you live with that all your life. I will never forget what happened in Algeria in those 10 years, but I just cope with it.
Wow, that's...
The fact I'm talking about it, that remind me all these fear and that feeling that I hid it for a long time. I thought I forgot that, but we don't.
It's still there, you don't forget it. Yeah,
no,
it's
never.
still a part of you.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask Yasmin. Yasmin, can you tell us what the conflict was that you're dealing with, or that you had to deal with, and how has that impacted you?
So when we talk about conflict, I would avoid using that term in a sense that when genocide occurs, it's not an equal power being in conflict with one another. It is most of the time the imbalance of power. It's one group of people with a lot more authority, a lot more power, taking away the power that the other group has in terms of basic human rights, or the means of production, or the necessary things to survive in the first place. And so the word conflict would be sort of problematic in this sense. But what I've had to witness, or what I've experienced growing up, mostly it was marginalization, it was name callings, it was psychological trauma, it was the sense of belonging that was taken away from me. And most of the time, because I lived in Thailand for most of my childhood life, and for about 16 years, those were the time that I have questioned the very meaning of who I am, and why I am not accepted, and why I'm not necessarily being considered as equal as other human beings in that country. And so that has been something that I've sort of struggled all throughout the time, until I came to Canada and were able to sort of reestablish myself and reestablish the meaning of life a little bit better, and the sense of belonging. But it doesn't end there. Going through a genocide as a generation, or as a group of people, we often carry the pain or the wounds of our ancestors. And within my own family, I can even, give you some examples. My grandmother had to lose the entire family because they were killed in 1942, and they had to, her and her brother had to flee to another village at the age of 13 and 8, and that's just not normal. But it exists in every single Rohingya family and every single population that has gone through somewhat similar situations. And so my own mom had to flee or had to fight off the military who were trying to rape her and take advantage of her sexually. And it's during the time that she was trying to flee and having me as a baby with her in 1995. And this is the kind of generational trauma. This is the kind of question that is passed down. Are we not enough? Are we just being human, not equal? Are we not going to get any help? Are we not going to be able to live our lives normally? Because we're not considered as equal as others, and so this is the kind of experience that I think is very, very universal within the Rohingya community.
Yeah, I mean the Rohingya challenge, the crisis with the Rohingya is still ongoing, as you said, and it's definitely something that we need to continue to work on. So Assia, can we talk a little bit about, you mentioned some examples of how it was in terms of the difficulty of living with it. How does it feel after the fact? Like you mentioned that you cope with, but how do you manage that? How do you manage to, are there triggers that happen? Like how do you continue to live day to day?
You become very sensitive to injustice. When I'm witness about any situation of injustice, mm-hmm. I can't just watch it. I have to help. You become like that. You become very sensitive. About if you see any conflict, you panic. You can't live in a place or a country that always there is a fight or even. I can tell you small detail. For years, I couldn't walk and having people walking behind me because that time you could walk and there is someone behind you could kill you, stab you with a knife or a gun or doesn't matter. That means for years, or going to the forest because they used to kill people, women. Most of women they were killed in the forest. It took me a while to cope with it.
Wow. Yeah, it's so hard, right? Because you hear about these things outside, but then when you've actually experienced and somebody so close that has, it's just so much more difficult to. I think for me, for example, now hearing you, right, it makes me appreciate how much you've been through and how far you've come. So thank you for sharing your experience with us.
Oh, yeah. For that, you see, I'm involved in many organizations
for sure.
To help. If I can help, I do it.
Absolutely. So Yasmin, tell us, how have you been able to cope after having come to Canada? What has that been like for you?
I don't think that genocide could end in the near future. And so for our case, for the Rohingya case, we are not managing to cope at all. We're just living a day-to-day life, hoping that there would be something better, hoping that the next morning we would find out that we would be restored our rights, reparation will happen, and that we would be able to be accepted, have our legal status back, and that we would be able to access those basic human rights that everyone needs. But we live with that hope, and sometimes it feels like a false hope. And so even though I'm here in Canada, to a lesser degree, very, very much less, I continuously live in fear of losing families, losing the members of the people that I hold dear. I still have majority of my family back home in Myanmar, in northern Rakhine State, and I just do not want to hear about the news. And sometimes it plays with this, it plays into this sort of already existing fear that something really bad is going to happen. And I just pray every day that my families are going to be okay. I don't think that I consider myself being out of genocide necessarily, because we're still dealing with it. People in Rakhine State or people in Bangladesh are still feeling the effects of it. The Myanmar regime has not retreated or made any attempt to repair the relationship or to pay the reparation that we need. So I'm still, quite detached from the root of my own self, of my own history. And so that is still something I'm trying to wrap my head around. That's, I think, one of the reasons why I have took it upon myself to become a little bit more outspoken about the issue in and of itself.
Okay, great. So what advice, Assia, would you give to somebody who, who's either fled conflict or is currently going through it?
We have to think. We have really, we say for every action there is a reaction. You can't just take an action without thinking where that action is leading you.
Right.
Because at certain point you can't go back. It's done. It's over.
Right.
And I see right now in Algeria people are going,
they're
walking,
protesting, yeah.
gathering outside because they don't agree with the extension, that term extension. But still you see people that are walking in peace, in peaceful way, because we had listened. In 1988, we had that listen. And people, they don't want that anymore.
Right. So they're being mindful of that for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So let us just take a quick break and then we'll come back. Welcome back, everyone. And so we were just before the break, we were talking to Assia. So I know that you were talking about sort of what it was like, but do you have a specific example of something you saw or you remember?
During those 10 years, you weren't safe anywhere. You could walk in the street and a car explode, or just someone come and start shooting, or many different things can happen. But there is something who is in my mind. It's I had that experience. We were looking for a cousin, and we had to go to the morgue and looking in those pieces of part of human bodies after an explosion, if we could find his head or so to recognize him.
Right.
And that was experience of many Algerians.
Right.
And it's so terrible, terrible.
And we were talking earlier about, the nursing the student that you had.
Yeah, I used to teach in university nighttime, and once I had that student. She was a nurse, and I said, "What you are doing? Already you have a job." She said, "I'm too tired to sew the bodies, just to give them to their families." That it's terrible. What people in the hospital were seeing was terrible.
Right. And your son, how did you feel when you were telling your son
at
night?
Every morning before I leave to work, I would tell my son, "Listen, if mommy doesn't come today, we will meet one day in other life." There were two things I used to tell my son when he was young. That I might not come back the afternoon, or nighttime. I would tell my son, if something happened, I have to hide you. Even if you hear mommy and daddy screaming, don't come out until we come to you.
Right.
Because they were coming sometimes nighttime to us just to kill people, or to steal, or to mutilate, or I don't know, this kind of people. I don't think they were normal.
Right.
For years, I didn't think these people were Algerians, could be brothers and sisters.
Right,
But they
doing
were. I lived in denying that for years.
Right.
But the fact they were part of us.
Any last thoughts that you have to share with the audience about this?
What can I say? I mean, the life has a value. We shouldn't just throw our life for no reason for anything. We have to think about every action that we do in our life. This is my last thought.
Mm-hmm. So Yasmin, for yourself as well, what advice would you give somebody who has been through, conflict or is currently going through it?
I wouldn't even call it advice, because it's something that I found to be helpful to me, but maybe it's not as helpful because people are in many different stages of their lives, and the problems that we face are very, very different. I'm considered very, very privileged to be in Canada and be able to live my life and access the kind of needs, the basic needs that I need, as well as other kind of rights, other kind of needs. I have way more opportunity. I have the opportunity to speak out and not being vilified or harmed. And so one thing that I would be able to say is that, specifically to my Rohingya brothers and sisters and other people who are going through the same thing, please do not ever take your life lightly. Please do not ever, even 1 second, think that you're worthless. Think that your worth is less than any other human being, because God made you and send you into this world. He knows what you can achieve. He has a lot of hopes for you. And so no other human beings, regardless of what their position of power is, or regardless of their class system or the social standing they have, or the socioeconomic privilege they might have, they have no rights to tell you you should die or you should live. You should be the one who actually make the call. You should be the one who are able to actually bring, raise your voice if you want to, cope with the kind of problems that you face silently if you want to. And so you are worthy, and you are worthy of anything and everything that your mind can dream of. And I don't want you to forget that.
Thank you so much. And do you have any last minute thoughts then?
First of all, thank you so much, Farheen, for actually allowing us to share our experience and shed light on the very issue that's really, really difficult to digest, and I'm sure it's very hard to dive, very deeply into it, because it obviously maybe triggers some traumas or some things that we all just don't want to remember. But it's also very important for us to be aware of what goes on around us. For example, the things that just happened, the atrocity that was perpetrated within New Zealand, the shooting inside the place of spirituality, the place of prayer. It has to be talked about. It has to be brought out to light, because we will not get to address the issue of how the society is going wrong, or what the society is doing wrong. Us as a member of the society, we wouldn't be able to have that opportunity if we don't take the opportunity when the calamity strikes. We don't, we can't just send our prayers and thoughts. And so very same thing happens within the Rohingya community. We can't just, stay silent, because the atrocity will be ongoing for other, I don't know for how many more generations to come. But it has to be addressed now. It has to be fixed now, in order for our generations, for the next generation to come, and not have to bear the kind of burdens that we all have to digest and go through. And so I would like to leave you with this. It is so important for us to take lives a lot more seriously. We have to come to terms with knowing and understanding and acknowledging that our actions today have a long-lasting impact on someone else's lives for generations to come. And so we have to take lives a little bit more seriously, in a sense that all lives are equally valuable. We shouldn't pick and choose just because that this one person has more wealth or this one person has lighter skin. It is the problem in our society that we have to, stop classifying people and stop fitting, human beings into these tiny boxes that we have created into, within our own imagination. And so people are much more than that. We are a human being. We are, sent as a mercy to the world. And so let that be something that, we hold dear and we use as a guidance, as a guide to when we explore our lives. And I would encourage, lastly, encourage anyone who is interested in advocating for Rohingya and advocating for people, who not necessarily have the means to come out and speak out on their own for the fear of life, for the social standing that they have, for us to come together and find a way to resolve this and find a way to, advocate our government or people in the position of power to do more. And so I would encourage everyone who's interested in the Rohingya Human Rights Network and our work to join us. We will be having a very, very big event this coming August, on August 25th, to commemorate the genocide that is happening and has been ongoing for the longest time. And I really hope that you all will join us. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again for being on the show as well, and thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, so I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.